weekend retreat. So I'm going to give a talk before we do our meditation on the myth of the rainy season retreat. Just talking a little bit about how the retreat tradition arose back there in the mists of time in the Buddhist community, and why it's so useful and relevant for us to go on retreat nowadays, even when we can't go on a residential retreat because of that dashed COVID. So we've constructed an online retreat for you for the Easter weekend, and if you're not already booked on, you're very welcome to join us if you'd like to. All you need to do is go to the website, find the Spring Rainy Season Retreat, and just book on. There's no charge, and you can come to all of our events. It's a full program. You'll get an email immediately telling you all about it, and a Zoom link, so you could come and join us on Zoom and make some new friends. Well, it's 7:05, so it's time to start. So so I'm going to talk about the myth of the rainy season retreat. And I was thinking, actually, myth is a word that has both positive and negative connotations, I think. I think certainly amongst my Buddhist friends in Triratna, we love the word myth. But sometimes, it can seem to be referring to something that isn't true, or that's downright sort of untrue, fake news perhaps. But I'm talking about myth as a story which explains the beginnings of a particular phenomenon, whether it's a natural phenomenon or a cultural phenomenon. And very often there'll be a myth that explains how that phenomenon began. And very often a myth has some sort of supernatural aspect to it. And I think in our sort of scientific, materialistic culture, we tend to distrust anything that's got supernatural aspects to it. So I think that's why the word myth has become a bit of a pejorative word. But I encourage you to be a little bit open-minded this evening about the nature of reality. I'm going to explain how it is that retreats became such an important part of the Buddhist tradition, and particularly the rainy season retreat, which not all of you might have heard of, but I'll explain what the rainy season retreat is and how it came about. And I think that story as well is very relevant to us today. So, I mean, one of the sort of really important aspects of retreat is that it creates community and an opportunity for sort of collective practice. If you're practicing meditation as a Buddhist, the community of meditators, the community of practitioners is really important. Because as a Buddhist, you're practicing because you want to get enlightened. And enlightenment is not an individual attainment, unless you're actually the Buddha himself. The Buddha is the only person who attained enlightenment sort of on his own. The rest of us, we need to be part of a sort of a collective endeavour. That collective, that community, needs to have within it inspired, attained individuals who share their practice with everybody. And that community also needs to be a community that cherishes the teachings of the Buddha, that keeps them alive and keeps them in focus for everybody. If you're not quite sure what the teachings of the Buddha are, you could say there's the truth of impermanence, for example, or the Four Noble Truths, or the truth of dependent origination. But if you're a beginner, then impermanence, the impermanence of all things, in a way encapsulates the Buddha's teachings. And what I've been meditating and going on retreat for about 17 years now, and what I've learned is, in that time, is that it's about a lot more than simply well-being, establishing a sort of sane mental states, making my life better. It's a way in which I can grow and become freer and more liberated. It's a means by which I can engage much more creatively, imaginatively, and realistically, actually, with the way things actually are in my life. So let me take you back 2,500 years ago. Gautama, the Buddha to be, went forth from home in quest of enlightenment. He was compelled to do that, compelled to discover the real meaning behind suffering and the impermanence, the old age, sickness and death. And he knew that he wasn't going to find it at home. He said the household life is a dusty life. And he committed to live in the open air for the rest of his days. So the household life is a dusty life, said the Buddha. And there's something sort of quite banal about the idea of the household life being dusty. And what does he really mean? The household life is dusty. I'm not sure that he was empathising with, frustrated housewives, if you'll excuse the gender stereotype. I think what he means is that the household life, the domestic life, even though we idealise it, we have an ideal, adverts exploit the ideal of family life. But actually in practice, very often, it feels congealed and very limited. It feels very sort of mundane, and we can often feel quite trapped in it. So we idealise it, but most of the time it's quite sort of constricting. Until really significant life events happen, like the death of a loved one, and then you're sort of plunged into a new reality. So, but most of the time, life becomes just about getting and spending and doing what you need to do to get through the day. And the Buddha realised he needed to escape that in order to find out the real sort of meaning of life. And he stepped out into the wilderness, into the open air. He instinctively understood that enlightenment happens outside the quotidian, which is a lovely word, which quite simply means ordinary everyday life, the quotidian. Enlightenment happens outside of the quotidian. You need to step outside of everything that's familiar. You need to have the courage, in a way, to go beyond yourself, beyond what feels comfortable. And you need to enter into a collective that is inspired and supportive. So maybe some of you are feeling a little bit anxious that I'm trying to persuade you to abandon your loved ones, and I'm not exactly doing that. But I am saying that in the Buddhist life there is a kind of a fundamental rhythm that we need to follow. We go forth to acquire wisdom, to attain wisdom, so that we can return to practice compassion. And that's what the Buddha did. So the Buddha went forth, acquired wisdom, became enlightened, and actually, after he was enlightened, he did go back to his home and he did return to his family. Many of them became practitioners themselves. His son became a monk. And that's what we can do as well. We go forth onto a retreat, into our practice. Every time you meditate, in a way, that's a little going forth. But you come back in order to practice compassion. And that's a sort of a fundamental rhythm in the Buddhist life, in the Buddhist practice. So this is why we encourage you to go on retreat, and this is why you might want to come on retreat this weekend, or why you've already chosen to come on retreat. On the retreat, we provide you with opportunities to practice meditation collectively. We provide you with talks, inspirational talks. We've got Jnana Vacha coming tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday and Monday to give talks. We provide you with activities that help you to sort of step out of the ordinary everyday world that actually, because of COVID, may seek to sort of cling on to you. And we provide you with devotional practices in the evenings with puja. So all of these enable you to sort of break the spell of ordinary everyday life and enter into a more kind of magical, expansive, liberated realm. And this is why we go on retreat. But at least in the early days, the Buddha and his band of followers, they didn't go on retreat. They lived a nomadic life. There weren't any retreat centres, for one thing. Nobody had set up retreat centres in ancient India. So yeah, he didn't go. In a way, he was kind of permanently on retreat, except it wasn't retreat, it was kind of going forth, permanently nomadic, mendicant, going from town to town, begging for alms, not owning anything, because as soon as you start to own something, you're kind of tied down. You start to get pulled into this quotidian. So the Buddha and his followers didn't do that, and they didn't go on retreat, they just travelled. Would stay in the forest or outside towns and villages, teaching. Maybe people would come and join them, and that was their life. How did the tradition of the retreat come about? Just before I do tell you that, there was a sense of community amongst the Buddha and his followers. He created an order and he ordained people so that he sort of started the sense of a lineage, so people would learn from the Buddha and then go on and teach to people less experienced than themselves. So there was an extended sense of a collective community that was inspired, that cherished the teachings, but there was no retreat. But actually, think about it. The Buddha was ordained sometime around 30 years old, and he taught until he was 80. So that is, 4 or 5 decades of teaching the Dharma. And he created a movement that grew and grew and became very large. And it had a huge impact on the society in which the Buddha was living and teaching. It became a hugely important phenomenon in that society. It had a massive impact. And for hundreds of years, obviously right up to the present day, the Buddha's teachings have had a huge impact. 200 years after the Buddha died, King Ashoka established a Buddhist sort of kingdom in India. King Ashoka is perhaps one of the greatest leaders in world history. Maybe a little bit underrepresented in our history books, but actually there is a very good programme about him on In Our Time on Radio 4, so you can look that up and find out a bit about King Ashoka. But my point is that the Buddha and his followers stepped out of the world, but they had a huge impact on their society and on subsequent societies. Their practice really had an impact. And we can see that happening now, here in the West, that Buddhism is really beginning to sort of flourish in the West as well and having quite a huge impact. So how did the retreat come about, and how did the rainy season retreat come about? And perhaps, what is a rainy season retreat? Well, as the Buddha, as the movement behind the Buddha grew and grew, problems started to arise. And farmers started to complain that particularly during the rainy season, monks were tramping all over their crops and causing havoc. So as the movement grew, the Buddha had to start crafting the community to be functioning within the society upon which it was beginning to be a very significant, within which it was beginning to be a very significant force. So ultimately, a number of regulations were instituted by the Buddha in order to allow the movement to sort of coexist with the society in which it was situated. And one of them was the institution of the rainy season retreat. So for the period of the rains, the Buddha said we must gather and stay put for the period of the rains, for the 3-month period of the rain. So natural and social constraints began to make themselves felt on the monks' practice. And instead of struggling with that, the Buddha managed to turn this into an opportunity. So the tradition of going on retreat for 3 months of the year started. And these rainy season retreats became the occasion when the Buddha could teach, when people could practice collectively, share their experience, cherish the teachings. So many of the teachings of the Buddha that have been passed down to us were introduced during a rainy season retreat. If you read the ancient texts, often a sutra will begin with a description of the Buddha addressing the community in the rainy season retreat. And one particular teaching that falls into that category is the teaching of the Anapanasati. So the Anapanasati is actually the Sanskrit term for the mindfulness of breathing. And it's said in the sutra that introduces the Anapanasati that this was a very particular rainy season retreat. So normally the rainy season retreats lasted for 3 months. But on this particular year, the rainy season was wetter than usual, if that's possible, and longer than usual. The rains just didn't stop, and the Buddha realised that they were going to have to stay on retreat for another month, for a 4th month. And he made an announcement to the gathered retreat. Said, we're going to stay together for another month. And at the end of that month, I will give us a very important teaching. So I find that quite quite fascinating. To realise that the tradition of the rainy season retreat emerged. It didn't sort of spring fully formed from the brain of the Buddha. It emerged as a response to the conditions that he and his followers found themselves in. And they turned those conditions to their advantage. The advantage of being on retreat is what you could call the sort of the Groundhog Day factor. You wake up in the same place every morning and you do the same thing day after day, and you start to learn about yourself. You start to learn about your habits. You start to become intimately connected to the other people who are practicing with you. I'm sure that the Buddha would much rather have been carried on with his nomadic existence. I wonder if for him, it felt like it was getting a bit dusty in that rainy season retreat. And the same for his followers. That's what they were committed to. That's what they wanted to do. But they had to adapt themselves to the conditions that they were in and turn it into a virtue. And I think that there's kind of a bit of a resonance there between that situation and the situation we find ourselves in lockdown. Many of my Buddhist friends actually have really flourished during lockdown, because actually they've just been able to meditate far more consistently because they haven't been able to sort of get away. And every time we go on retreat, we can sort of benefit from this collective intensifying the structure of it. To surrender ourselves to the structure of the retreat means that we can let go and drop down more deeply into our experience. So that's what we're going to offer you on this retreat, is the opportunity, even whilst you're at home, to step out of the quotidian and into a mythic retreat realm where you can explore more expansive, liberated states of mind, where you can sort of push the boundaries, if you like, of your sort of consciousness. You're on the brink this evening of going forth to acquire wisdom. And at the end of the retreat, you'll be able to return in order to practice compassion. And what we need to do is to be conscious that even though we're in our little separate spaces, our little thumbnails on the Zoom links, we are practicing collectively. We're cherishing the doctrine, and we're sort of living united. We're surrendering to the logic of the retreat and letting it take us where it will. And if we trust that process, relax into it, then we will be radiating love. So what I suggest we do now is we do a period of the mindfulness of breathing. I'll lead us through a special sort of anapanasati flavoured mindfulness of breathing. And then there will be the opportunity for some reflections, questions after that. And then at around 8 o'clock, we'll end the live stream, and then those of you who are on Zoom will have an opportunity for groups and some devotional practice to launch the retreat. And even if you can't come on the retreat, I hope that talk has given you a sense of the possibility of the ways in which you can go forth on a weekend like this. Take yourself out on a bike ride or a walk, or read some poetry, anything that helps you to escape the ordinary everyday. So, taking up your meditation posture. So I'm going to do a sort of a special 3-stage version of the mindfulness of breathing. And in the first stage, we'll just connect with the breath. In the second stage, we'll broaden out our awareness to scan the body, notice the sensations of the body. And then in the final stage, we'll just focus down into like the 4th stage of the mindfulness of breathing. I'll just guide us through it. So just taking a few moments to turn towards your own experience, mindfulness of breathing. So I encourage you just to simply begin by noticing the breath. As it comes in and out of the body. Becoming curious about the in-breath and the out-breath. Perhaps noticing how the breath comes into the body, through the nose, down past the back of the mouth into the chest. How the breath inhabits the body. Perhaps allowing your awareness just to rest on the breath. Breathing in, breathing out. You might notice that the breath naturally lengthens. Seeing if you can not get too entangled in controlling the breath. Allowing it to come and go. Just noticing how the breath inhabits the body, and letting that be your cue for expanding your awareness to take in the whole of the body. The whole upper half of the body moves with the breath. Just noticing that. the sensations of the lower part of the body are directly connected to the breath. Energizing the body with oxygen. So it's as if the whole body is permeated with the breath. Perhaps noticing the quality of the sensations in the body. Making sure you connect, you notice the pleasant sensations. Gift of the breath. Tingling. Coolness. Buoyancy of the breath. Seeing if you can soften around discomfort or pain. Perhaps breathing into it. Keeping it simple, not going off with thoughts or stories. Seeing if you can stay with the bare sensations of the breath and the body. And for the last few minutes, just focusing your attention on the place where the breath first comes into the body. Cool spot around the nose. perhaps noticing how the breath is never still, never stops. And sensations change and flow. And now letting go of the effort you've been making. Just sitting for a few moments. Perhaps just being aware that you're in a sort of digital woodland clearing, meditating with 30 or 40 other people. All connected. And as I ring the bell to mark the end of this period of practice, in your own time, opening your eyes and coming out of the meditation. So I don't know, the evening seems to have flown by. I don't know if you've had that experience. I don't know if we've got a few minutes now. If anybody would like to ask a question or contribute a reflection on chat, it can be quite a nice way of evoking the community that we're building just now. So just write your question into chat and Liz will moderate. Yeah, I didn't say that I'm here with Liz, who's supporting me with the technical aspects of the evening, and And then on Zoom we've got Kamalanaga also hosting. So yeah, it's been a bit of a technical feat this evening. The retreat, we have a sort of a slogan for the retreat, which is cherish the doctrine, live united, radiate love. I think those are the three sort of qualities of the retreat community, sort of encapsulated. Doctrine, you could say, is a word that could be a word for the Dharma, and the Dharma is the teaching of the Buddha. So we bear the teaching, we bear in mind the teachings of the Buddha as we meditate, as we practice. And in a retreat, we're living united. So one of the kind of key skills of a retreat, in a way, is to surrender to the program. Just turn up to everything that you can turn up to and let it work its magic on you. So I would encourage you to do that. And then we create a community. I think there's something from Selena.
Can you read that, or do you want me to read it out?
Selena, you say, thank you for your talk. I really enjoyed it. Sadly, where I live, it's too loud to join you on retreat, but I hope you all have a great time. Selena, well, you could, I'm sorry that you can't join us. I remember you coming regularly on Thursday evenings when we were still embodied, and I hope to see you at Cambridge Buddhist Centre sometime in the future. And we'll be here next week. Meditation night is not going away. We're starting a new series next week, which I've forgotten what it's called. Is it the 5 principles of something? Oh no, I shouldn't have started that. It's the 5 growth factors.
The 5 essentials for human growth.
Thank you, Kamalanaga. The 5 essentials for human growth. But we're following a course called The Journey and the Guide, a practical guide to enlightenment. So each of those talks will, give you a window on how you can sort of develop your practice. So you could sign up for that course. I'd recommend that, Selena. I think you'd enjoy that. And anybody here tonight would really benefit from signing up for that course, led by Artisiddhi, Satyapura and Dharma Siddhi. Okay, I've got a funny feeling I slightly lost track of where I am, so I better pull it back into focus. So, in a few minutes, we will end the live stream. Thank you so much for coming. If you're watching us on YouTube.
I did just paste the link because some people were struggling to get the information.
Okay.
We might have a few people, because Sam's just signed up to the retreat from YouTube, so he wants to join over. So hopefully people will join us now.
Yeah, okay, lovely. So that's great. Very welcome to join us on the retreat. And in a couple of minutes we'll close down the YouTube live stream. See you next week. And then it'll just be us on Zoom.